You have great ideas as always. John Canzano with us. JohnCanzano.com, the bald-faced truth, 750 The Game down in Portland. It's all brought to you by Zeke's Pizza, Zeke'sPizza.com for the best selection of local Northwest craft beers. Make Zeke's Pizza your choice today. And look behind us. You are coming to us for the first time in the Puck Sports Studios, built by Limbach Lumber, John Canzano, family-owned and serving the Northwest since 1930. Northwest premier supplier of specialized lumber and moldings. You need a new deck. And you need a new fence, and Limbach Lumber is going to get that new deck and new fence for you if you visit limbachlumber.com or give them a call at 206-782-3487. Free delivery in the Seattle area. Puck Sports Studios built by Limbach Lumber. And that's where we get to talk to John Canzano every single Tuesday. How are you, sir?
I'm well. I love that. 1930? I mean,
1930.
There's a story there, Puck. Like, there's a family story. There are people
same family.
With calluses on their hands who have had some splinters, who have dealt with some stuff. I love those stories. I love those businesses that are family businesses that have these great stories.
And big UW family. So shout out to Paul and everyone that works there. Not so much Matt. Well, Matt grew up a Husky fan, but now is a Cougar fan. And then and Mark and everybody that works there. And there's a funny, I got to remember the exact story, intertwined story with Paul and this family. It's been in their family, Limbach Lumber. This is the third generation.
It's amazing.
Since 1930. I believe, God, Paul, don't yell at me if I screw this story up. I believe Paul's brother was the lawyer for UW. I think it was against Rick Neuheisel.
Oh, wow.
You know, that whole case. But then he became like UW's football lawyer. Like he kind of represented like the whole team at any time. Remember that stretch where they were like always in court for something?
Well, they had their back.
They had their back. Limbach Lumber
and everybody
had their
needs
back.
Lumber. Everybody needs lumber in their life.
Everybody does need lumber for sure. Let's start with Washington. Boy, it seems like you turn around every time you turn around. Jedd Fisch has landed himself another recruit. He got the state's best recruit yesterday, a kid that had originally committed to Kalen DeBoer. Then when Kalen left, he opened it back up, but Jedd Fisch was able to get him. And then he was able to go down to your neck of the woods in Oregon and poach apparently the number one recruit down there. It seems like everything's been going pretty well here for Jedd Fisch in the offseason.
We talked last week about kind of their philosophy of selling access to the NFL and Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll hanging out at practice and Jedd Fisch's experience in the NFL. I was talking with Greg Biggins, who covers recruiting all the time. I don't geek out on recruiting like these recruiting guys do. Like, I don't need that many 16, 17, 18-year-olds in my life. But I was talking to him, and I was picking his brain about Washington and Oregon in particular, because two very different approaches, both having some success. The Big Ten is certainly helping. But Fisch getting the guys he should get is a big positive marker in that space, like getting guys he should get in the Pacific Northwest. So keep an eye on that. It's the angle they have to sell. They're selling it. Meanwhile, you got Dan Lanning at Oregon. And it's really weird what's happened at Oregon, because Oregon always kind of towed the line with recruiting and had Phil Knight, and they were making comic books, and the NCAA said you can't do comic books. They were picking up the kids in a Hummer. They said you can't impress kids and pick them up in a Hummer. Now they're in this Division Street collective portal era that they are uniquely designed to play in, and Oregon's making hay in there as a top 5 program. The question for both Jedd Fisch and Dan Lanning is, will they be able to develop these guys? Will they be able to maximize the talent? I think it puts some pressure, particularly on Lanning at Oregon, to come through. But it's an interesting time to kind of watch the shift in recruiting, and some schools nationally that just aren't built for it, and some others like SMU even. The boss hogs at SMU who are sitting back in their white suits and their cowboy hats going, let's go, Pete, go. Those guys are –
I got more money than Jesus Christ.
Those guys – I called those guys when SMU was a candidate to join the Pac-12 or maybe go to the ACC or wherever they were going to go. And I asked those guys – they're the Boulevard Collective, right? They had studied all the collectives. They thought behind Oregon they could be number 2 in the Pac-12. I said, what about the exit fee in the American Athletic Conference? You have to give a year's notice. It was like $10 million. Other schools had negotiated like $17 million. And one of the boosters told me, hasta la vista, write the check, baby. That's SMU. They're going to play in this space too.
How are they not better? Like they should be.
They will
like,
be.
But they've got to be like the best team in the country. I just all I can envision is just the character from Dukes of Hazzard with the white suit and the cigar.
They are. That's them. But they will be. They'll be a big player. You watch. They've got the money, and it's almost like we've watched private businesses sort of move into this public space in a big way, right? It is. I mean, it's Nike, it's Phil Knight at Oregon, it's all that petroleum money at SMU. You got to have an angle, and you got to know how to do things yourself.
Here's a good angle that I just you sparked it. You sparked it in me there, Johnny. When do you think the PIF gets involved in college sports?
PIF, the private equity funds.
Yeah,
I think they're kicking the tires now. I remember when Grand Canyon University kind of burst onto the scene. I talked to some private equity companies there, and they thought, hey, could a for-profit thing work in the university space? And if so, how soon would private equity line up to get in there? Because it's new. They're always looking for new opportunities, new businesses, right? And the problem you have if you're a college is you have historically operated as, we're here to be self-sustaining. We're here to educate people. It's the mission of higher education. They haven't really fashioned themselves overtly as for-profit entities. So if you let private equity into the room, they walk into the room, Puck, they're like, assassins. They're looking for the exit the minute they walk in. So you have to know that, you have to protect yourself, and you have to know you don't want to be desperate in negotiating with them. Problem is most of those schools are desperate right now for cash, and you want to be able to protect yourself and not give up your equity too cheaply. But I think they end up in the room. I think it's in the spirit of NIL, free market, and I think the athletic departments are right now with the collectives are operating that way anyway. So I think you're going to see private equity in conferences, and I think you're going to see it in universities.
Wow, that would be – I'm going to tell you that it would just be a fascinating study on morals and higher education.
Yeah.
But if the Saudis came into one of these schools and said, oh – we'd like to invest into, let's just say it's Washington. We'd like to invest. We'll give you $150 million, whatever. You just name it.
Yeah.
We will take care, Washington, let's take Washington State because they're like more dire need. We'll take care of your debt right now. And then how do those school presidents look to their regents and everybody's surrounded and go, well, but we're getting in bed with them, but we can just erase our entire debt. That's where greed and money supersedes any moral beliefs.
And what you'll see, in the Pac-12 in 2019, I reported that they had, agreed to go out and test the market in private equity as it pertained to their media rights funds. And Larry Scott, then the commissioner of the Pac-12, he went out and he got an offer. It was $1 billion for 15% of the Pac-12's media rights. And how they protected themselves, the arm's length part of this that you're kind of alluding to, was they created a new corporation. It was formed. It was called the Pac-12 NewCo. And that Pac-12 NewCo was going to be where they pooled the media rights money, and that was going to operate as the media rights entity of the conference. And so it would give some cover for these schools to be able to say, we're not taking money from all these private equity funds. It's just we've sold off, the conference has sold off a portion of their media rights. They're taking money from private equity. Right. But it opens a whole Pandora's box. Keep an eye on the NFL and the NBA. They have kind of opened the door a little bit. We don't know if the sovereign fund of Saudi Arabia has got equity in an NFL team or not, or there's a lot of ways to hide money. But
sure,
whatever the NFL and the NBA do, college sports will be not far behind them.
Yeah. Speaking of UW, and I'm just curious if you think this is the product of realignment. Have you seen the story of the baseball coach at UW left? He after just 2 seasons, head baseball coach Jason Kelly left to become not a coach of another program. He left to be the pitching coach of Texas A&M. The whole Texas A&M fiasco. Did we talk about that last week? That guy going up there?
Yeah, no. Oh yeah, we did the Schlossnagels.
Yeah. So this guy, this Jason Kelly, left to be a head coach, left being a head coach, and agreed to be a pitching coach at A&M. And the first thought that came to my mind was, well, one, he's going to a better program. It's in the SEC. he probably looks at, he doesn't have to travel as much. They're going to have a, you know, better talent pool, and it's at a better conference and all that. But I really was steered towards, he probably doesn't want to be the head coach of a team that's going to be traveling as much as Washington is going to be traveling to go play in the Midwest. And if they struggle, then it's going to be on him, and maybe he gets fired or loses a job and can't get another job someplace else. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm grasping at straws, but that's kind of what I thought of initially.
Not, because the Washington job's got a ceiling on it, and it has a low floor on it that you're talking about with the travel and the potential for it to be your fault. And suddenly you are a pitching coach, and guess what? You're not a pitching coach at Texas A&M. You're a pitching coach at Eastern Washington or University of Portland, right? I mean, that's where the fall is if you get knocked out. Whatever happened to Lindsey Meggs, right? And so it's that Texas A&M job's a good job, and that's a stepping stone job to becoming, a head coach at LSU or Arkansas or somewhere else. And so I see what's happening there, but there's a larger issue here that I think we talked about it last August. It got talked about for about 6 weeks, and then everybody kind of moved on and started talking about football. But there was a groan last August when the Pac-12 schools that announced they're going to the Big Ten, Stanford and Cal to the ACC, the travel does not appeal particularly to sports that cannot afford to pay charters all the time. And you're going to have, I was recently this last weekend, there was a wedding, and it was a bunch of Midwesterners came out to Oregon getting married, and it was really interesting. I was at the rehearsal dinner, and I was listening to the conversation at the other end of the table. These were Iowa fans, Minnesota fans, and Wisconsin fans. They are pissed at Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA coming into the conference, because it means best case scenario, those schools are fighting for like 5th or 6th place now in a great year. And then secondarily, they were talking about the softball team from Washington or Oregon having to go to Ann Arbor. You're going through Chicago, you're sitting in the airport. These were not like diehard sports fans. They were just kind of talking about the impact. I had basketball coaches and baseball coaches in the Pac-12 tell me if I wanted to play in the Big Ten, I would have gone and coached in the Big Ten, or I would have stayed there in some cases. Mark Wasikowski at Oregon, he was at Purdue, left Purdue to come to Oregon. Now he's going to go back and play at Purdue. It can't be fun for any of these guys. Yeah, no, it's hard. It's hard. It's going to just be, I think we'll focus so much on the football teams, right? I mean, that's going to be it. But yeah, and you're going to, I am waiting for the piece that John Canzano is going to have at johncanzano.com. First time you have the piece on the softball player, the volleyball player, I don't know, the girls basketball player, the Olympic athlete who is just like, I'm done. This is miserable. Or a coach of one of those teams that probably off the record says this is ridiculous what we're doing, because it's going to happen. It was when UCLA and USC announced they were leaving in the summer of 22, right? They made this big announcement, proclamation, they were taking off, and I was covering later that fall. Oregon State was playing at Washington, and I stayed down at a hotel that was down near the University of Washington, and lo and behold, the UCLA men's soccer team happened to be in the lobby. And so I started talking with those guys. And this was at a time when UCLA was very touchy about they didn't want their athletes talking to the media, trashing the decision. There was still the Board of Regents meeting that was coming up that December. It was still some things that were in flux there. And I talked to several soccer players who said, I am so happy I'm not going to be here. They were just coming off a road trip where they played at Rutgers. They were saying they didn't get any sleep. They hadn't been to their classes. They were saying this isn't right. You shouldn't do this. They wondered about the recruiting implications. Like, will West Coast kids go to UCLA to play soccer, knowing that they're going to bus across or fly across the country to go play in Rutgers and Maryland and all these places? They weren't happy about it. I was at the Space Needle with my wife and kids, and the athletic director at UCLA calls me, and he's pissed. He's unhappy. He's kind of pushing back against the narrative, and mainly he was mad at what UCLA soccer player told me. And they couldn't protect that player and keep him away from me in the lobby of that hotel. But it was interesting to hear them talk about it. Well, yeah, they couldn't. You're right. They couldn't control the message, and they're nervous about what those are the athletes that are gonna talk and tell you the truth of how they feel, because those athletes are so far removed
from what the the football players are dealing with. What's the situation here here with Utah?
Yeah.
And what's going on there with Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley?
Yeah, last November when USC fired their defensive coordinator midseason, and all of a sudden last November it turns out that like a month after that firing goes down, Alex Grinch gets fired at USC. USC went after Morgan Scalley, and I think people suspected that, but it looks like Utah at the time did something super proactive, something maybe some other schools could learn from, and they told Morgan Scalley, hey, we're going to give you a raise. Got him up to $2 million. That's what he'll make this year as a defensive coordinator at Utah. But there's a provision in his contract now that makes him the head coach or the heir apparent. It has the salary, $5 million in his first year. And it really works, I think, only for two reasons. But it's really interesting to me. I think other schools should look at this. They've got a guy in Morgan Scalley who is deeply embedded in Salt Lake City. His wife is on the board of one of the churches there. He's got 3 kids in school there. He went to Utah. He's been there forever. It works because Scalley's willing to be patient. It also works because you got a Supreme Court justice in Kyle Whittingham as the head coach, who's not going to be rattled and has, he has a job beyond even being the head coach at Utah. But I kind of wondered if other schools who have been poached with coaches, and maybe Washington takes a page from this too, having gone from DeBoer to Jed Fish. Oregon went through this with Mario Cristobal and Willie Taggart recently. Oregon went back to hiring a guy who didn't have an alma mater to run to. Dan Lanning's, he went to William Jewell College. They're not going to hire him away. He doesn't have somewhere to go. Jed Fish could be hired away. We've talked about this. He could end up in Florida. He could end up somewhere else. He could end up back in the NFL. But Utah's got this thing where they have a Utah guy in Whittingham. They're going to follow him with a Utah guy in Morgan Scalley. There is just this measured, pragmatic, they just don't, they have their shit together, Puck. I mean, they just get it at Utah. It's not accidental.
But what happened with him initially? Didn't they initially have him?
Yes.
He initially would have this role a couple of years ago, but then something came up in his past.
Yeah.
Did you use like a racial slur in a text message they found?
And then they sort of admonished him. But I think they kind of settled on the idea that, we know this guy. We know who his character is.
Okay.
We've known him for the long term. We're not going to be reactive. And, I wrote a piece about it today at johncanzano.com where I sort of talk about like the fact that, you can do this. Utah in 2 years, the second and third year that they were in the Pac-12, Whittingham goes 5-7, 5-7. There were some Utah fans that were calling for his head. Chris Hill, the athletic director, turned to his university president and said, do we fire Whittingham? No, we're not. They pushed back. They stayed with him. All the guy did is take him to 2 Rose Bowls and, win like 10 games 4 times. And, there's just something at Utah where they're just not reactive, not as reactive, and they're going with their homegrown guys.
Yeah.
Right or die.
What do you think, how much longer do you think Kyle Whittingham has there?
It said in his deal, the end of his contract is 2027. And interestingly, Scalley's deal also runs through 2027, but it gives, Kyle Whittingham the option of going at any time. I think he's going to get them established in the Big 12 before he steps. So I would expect 2 more maybe for Whittingham.
Okay. And then right off into the sunset?
No, because then after he gets this special advisor title, he makes almost $1 million a year, and it's 5 more years for Kyle Whittingham. He gets another $5 million parachute at the end of it.
Jesus, man.
Good gig if you can get it. It's a good gig.
Yeah, he has been I know he's void, I guess, of the huge win. I guess the huge win is the national championship. But God, they are just consistently every year a damn good football team.
Yeah, play hard. They retain their players. I was looking at the transfer portal when they were in the Pac-12 last couple of years. It was Oregon State and Utah that had the best retention. And it was interesting to see that. It really is culture with Jonathan Smith and Kyle Whittingham at the time. But the bar's been lowered here for the playoff. It's no longer 4, it's 12. It'll be 14 or 16. Utah's going to be in that playoff. They're going to be in it frequently in the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, you know what? The one thing that they've always been missing, and I know God, why am I blanking on the quarterback's name? He's back for 19th year. Cam Rising. The one thing they've always have missed is that elite quarterback.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that has really held him back from probably winning a national title is just that elite difference maker at quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, Rising is really, really good, but he's not like elite.
Because Urban Meyer had Alex Smith, right? And but Whittingham, he's got a great leader in Cam Rising. He has a 9th year of eligibility available to him if he wants it. I don't think he's going to take it.
Wait a minute, time out. Hold on. Does he really?
Yeah. Because he's part of this group that transferred. He transferred into Utah, and the NCAA at the time said you transfer, you lose a year of eligibility, so he gets a year back. He's had medical red shirts. Cam Rising is eligible. This is his 8th year in college this season. He is eligible
could come
for
back one more?
He can come back for one more if he wants it. I'm being told by insiders that he would like to move on with his life before he hits Social Security age.
I don't want him to move on. I want to talk about a guy that's coming back for his 9th year.
Can you imagine
of college football? I would never wanted to leave college.
Dr. Rising starting at quarterback.
We like to.
It's going to be a dentist. Who knows at the end of this thing.
Going to be in a cane and a walker. They're going to retirement ceremony is going to be there at Utah. So, have you talked to Whittingham? What's he like? Bullish on this year's team?
He's always measured, and he's always very measured and steady. And and he's intense. I mean, this is a guy who rides a motorcycle and skis in his private life. He's a big skier and likes to get out on his bike. But as a football coach, he is just buttoned down. He not only retains players, he retains his assistants, Andy Ludwig and Morgan Scally. There's just such continuity and culture in that program. And people say it can't be done. But I was thinking about Oregon and what they did after Taggart and Cristobal. They've positioned Dan Lanning as a guy who's going to be there a long, long time, and he has nowhere to go but the NFL if the Kansas City Chiefs called him one day, right? That would be the job that I think would appeal to Lanning. I think Washington, after this Jed Fish thing runs its course, Washington's got to ask itself, does it have a alumni that is a high-profile coach? Is it develop somebody in that space? Because what happens, too, over time, and we saw this, at Oregon, you see it at Utah, is you get players who become graduate assistants, who become part of the program, who become, position coaches, who go off and be a coordinator somewhere else and then come back and be a coordinator at their alma mater. But when you change coaches and you go from DeBoer to Fish or Taggart to Cristobal, you almost lose all that to the point where you start over again and you lose this connection to your past of 15, 20 years ago, guys were part of your program. So I think Washington, Oregon, and these other schools really need to do a better job of kind of saying, we're going to keep these players inside of the system, even when they leave. Cam Rising could end up back at Utah. Nobody would be surprised if he's the offensive coordinator someday who replaces Andy Ludwig.
Why not come back for a 9th year and be the first ever player coach in college football?
There you go. He could do it.
I think he could.
Yeah.
I think he could. And actually run the whole thing, right?
Yep.
Run the whole thing. I think I would love to see that. It'd be the first ever in college athletics that someone would be able to do that. Hey, did you see how the Pac-12 Network went to dark? Did you watch that?
I did.
Yeah, that was sad. I got choked up, man. I really did. It was awful.
I think they could have done better. They just ran credits at the end.
Yeah.
But the sad thing for me was my phone over the weekend, Sunday morning into Monday, was blowing up with people taking screenshots or pictures of their television guide that said Pac-12 Network no longer a station or no longer programming or the signal is no longer broadcasting. And I got it from Pac-12 coaches. It just told me, even coaches that were departing for the Big Ten, it told me that even amid kind of the excitement of, we're going to play Michigan, we're going to play Ohio State, this is going to be new, we'll see some new teams, there are a lot of people that I think are lamenting, like, it didn't need to go this way. And
of course
the fact that there's a Power 2 out there now with the Big Ten and the SEC is really problematic. I think what we're going to see in that space too, Puck, is eventually we're going to see the SEC and the Big Ten, maybe some other conferences say, all right, we have some minimum standards that you need to meet Rutgers, Illinois, Purdue, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State. You have to spend this much money on football. You have to be able to pay your players, or you can't be part of the big, the Power Two.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all those like those second tier programs in those conferences, they are all like, oh, this is great. We're survived. You're the next on the chopping block.
And
guaranteed.
And it's like the Iowa fans that were at that rehearsal dinner. Like, Iowa had a nice season, and I said, hey, in a good year, what's Iowa playing for? And they go, well, we could be third. We could be fourth in a good year, but then not anymore. Because now you're behind Oregon, you're potentially behind USC, you might be behind Washington. So what are you playing for anymore? Yeah, you made it, you survived, but if you're Minnesota, if you're Illinois, if you're Purdue, Indiana, I covered that conference. There's a lot of schools in that conference in a great year that were hoping to be fifth. And they wouldn't say it, but that's what the fan base was hoping for. And now they're going to be eighth.
Yeah, nice column by Ashley Amundsen writing the for you. As she was there from the get-go. There from the get-go on the Pac-12 Network. That was a nice job. Nice job of getting that, and it was a nice piece written by her.
Yeah, she's going off to she's going to work at the Big Ten Network, and she's not going to be alone. I think there's going to be 2 or 3 other Pac-12 Network personalities that will go with her, end up there. It's interesting on the CW front for Washington State and Oregon State fans. I think they're going to go with NFL-flavored broadcast teams. It's not going over really well, but the CW has got some guys that have broadcast some NFL games.
Who are we talking about?
Some lower level NFL
who's
hold on, I'll give
lower
you one.
level.
I'll give you one.
Just give me one.
Okay, hold on a second. I want to make sure this is okay. I think you're going to see guys like Chase Daniel.
Sure, Chase Daniel's fine. I've seen him on the NFL Network. Yeah. He's fine.
You're going to see guys like Chase Daniel as the analyst. That's
fine.
Nothing in stone, but it's that.
I mean, I watched Pac-12 football with Glenn Parker.
Yeah.
I think I can stomach Chase Daniel.
But it didn't go over well with, there were some pro Pac-12 people at Washington State and Oregon State were hoping to see like a Nick Aliotti as an analyst, or some of the Pac-12 guys that would just kind of merge over. Hey, doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Hey, what is? Have you caught up with Rick Neuheisel at all?
I got a text from him about 10 days ago.
What's he going to do? Is he still with CBS, or what's his future?
I think so. I don't know, but I think he's done such a good job of positioning himself as a voice of reason out there, somebody with experience. He's so smart, from his experience as an attorney and then working as a coach at multiple stops. But I think other than Bill Walton, Rick Neuheisel is probably the most Pac-12 guy ever. And so he's kind of in the middle of this thing. Played there, went to school there, has been a coach at multiple places. Interesting.
Well, he might be there's been so much change, so I might be forgetting this. There's been so much change. Big Ten's on CBS now, right?
Big Ten has got NBC, Fox, CBS.
Okay.
I'm missing a piece of it, but that's
So they could keep. Actually, it might be wise to keep him on since with all the West Coast teams.
Yeah, and I also think he's got this Sirius XM show that he just kills it on. He does a great job.
Yeah.
So I think there's a place in the ecosystem there for Rick Neuheisel, no doubt.
Well,
no doubt.
He hasn't killed it like you. John Canzano from johncanzano.com. What else is what's up on the website right now?
Well, I wrote about Utah today, but I kind of it's a weird week. I don't know if you noticed this. It's a weird week with fireworks, okay? And people are asking questions like, is a drone show better than fireworks? Get out of here. Drone show's not better than fireworks. But it's a weird week. Everyone's out of rhythm. So I had the Monday mailbag, I got great questions again about the Pac-12, Oregon, Washington, all that's in there. But wrote about Utah today. And then on Sunday, I kind of did a potpourri of tidbits that I had that were kind of laying around. I had no other place for them, but it's very newsy on Sunday. But I noticed people are just out of rhythm. Social media is not the same. It's just the traffic out. People are in the stores now prepping for the weekend. I don't know. Get some sparklers, shoot off some,
what do you like? What's your favorite thing about 4th of July other than we beat England's ass?
I have very few days that are true days off. That's one of them. It's the 4th of July. And so I like the flow of that day where I know we're going to barbecue. I know we end up in the cul-de-sac, huddled around. I'll be out in the middle of the street, lighting off these little showers. It may emit sparks, fireworks. We'll overpay for those things, no doubt. But someone in the neighborhood will shoot off an illegal firework, and we'll all have to pretend like we're mature. But other than that, it'll be a nice, just relaxing day.
It's the one time a year that I like and enjoy myself an ice cold. This is the only time I have it. An ice cold, it's got to be in a can, original Budweiser. Ooh. Because I just love it just feels Americana.
That's tradition.
It's just the red and white can, but it's got to be ice cold.
All right.
Ice cold.
America
and then
right there.
America, and I have a little wife beater on, maybe throwing a big dip and just kind of spit down my chin a little bit.
You had grown up in SMU country, you would have fit right in.
Oh God,
right in there.
So I wish I would have. We gonna get him. All right, there he is. All right, John. Appreciate John. He joins us every Tuesday. Brought to you by Zeke's Pizza. John, have a wonderful 4th. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Puck.